One afternoon, my best friend and I were getting ready for our annual camping and fishing trip. We've been planning this getaway for months, a much needed break from our hectic jobs in the city. I work as a software developer, and my friend is a veterinarian. We both love the outdoors and have been going on these trips together since college. We decided to hit up the local shopping center to grab some last-minute supplies. Both of us were decked out in our camping gear, camo pants, sturdy boots, and leather jackets. We probably looked a bit out of place in the bright, air-conditioned store, but we didn't think much of it at the time. As we were browsing the outdoor equipment aisle, an elderly gentleman approached us. He was using a walking cane and seemed a bit lost. He politely asked us if we could direct him to where he might find the croissants. My friend and I exchanged looks. We had just come from the food section and knew it was quite a distance away. My friend asked the gentleman if the cart nearby was his, to which the old man nodded and pointed at it. My friend then kindly offered to fetch the cart for him. Without hesitation, my friend jogged over to the cart and brought it back to the elderly gentleman. The old man expressed his gratitude, thanking my friend for his kindness. We watched as the old man slowly made his way towards the bakery section, feeling good about helping him out. Little did we know someone else had been watching too. As we turned back to our shopping, I noticed a woman approaching us. She was stunning, tall, slim, with long blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. She looked like she had just stepped off a fashion magazine cover, but the look on her face was anything but friendly. She raised her hand and actually snapped her fingers at us, pointing to her own shopping cart. My friend and I looked at each other completely baffled. Was she serious? The woman impatiently asked what we were waiting for. When my friend expressed confusion, she demanded to know if we were going to take her cart to the register. My friend, still puzzled, asked why we would do that. The woman then yelled, as if it were obvious, that it was our job. Suddenly it clicked. This woman thought we worked at the store. My friend, always quick on his feet, decided to have a little fun with the situation. He began repeatedly telling the woman that he didn't work there, emphasizing his words with claps. The woman kept trying to interject, but my friend continued his mantra, getting louder each time. At this point, he was practically shouting, still clapping with each word. The woman's face turned bright red. She spun on her heels and stormed off, moving so fast it looked like she was gliding across the floor. About a minute later, she came marching back. I braced myself for another confrontation, but what happened next shocked us both. The woman demanded our attention, and my friend and I tensed up, ready for another round of entitled demands. To our surprise, she expressed her desire to apologize. My brain short-circuited. Did an entitled person just apologize? My friend tried to brush it off, but the woman insisted on apologizing. She repeated her apology, mimicking my friend's earlier clapping emphasis. That's when I lost it. I burst out laughing so hard I nearly fell over. The woman started giggling too, and soon all three of us were in stitches, right there in the middle of the outdoor equipment aisle. As it turned out, she wasn't entitled at all. She had honestly mistaken us for employees because of our outdoor gear. She had been trying to apologize from the beginning, but my friend kept cutting her off in his attempt to out-Karen her. We ended up chatting for a while after we all caught our breath. She was actually really nice and had a great sense of humor. In fact, she and my friend really hit it off. They exchanged numbers before we left the store. Fast forward 2 years, and I'm helping my friend pick out a ring. Yep, you guessed it. He's proposing to the Karen from the store. Life really does work in mysterious ways sometimes. Who would have thought that a misunderstanding in a shopping center would lead to a beautiful love story? So the next time you think someone's being entitled, maybe give them a chance to explain. You never know, they might just turn out to be your future spouse. First, you should know that I'm a veteran. I served my country proudly, but it cost me my left leg from the knee down. Lost it in some godforsaken jungle on a mission I'd rather not relive. But hey, the military hooked me up with a sweet bionic replacement, so I can't complain too much. A couple years back, I got an upgrade on my prosthetic. Sleek, high-tech, and honestly, pretty damn cool. When I went to pick it up, my doctor gave me some advice that would come in handy later. He told me that to save myself some hassle when traveling, especially flying, I should let the Transportation Security Administration agents know about my prosthetic leg up front. He even handed me this nifty little card with a miniature X-ray of a prosthetic leg. Thoughtful guy, right? So there I was, at the airport, ready for a much-needed vacation. I've been looking forward to this trip for months, a chance to relax, forget about the daily grind, and maybe even meet some new people. Little did I know, I was about to meet someone who'd leave quite an impression, just not in the way you'd expect. I'm standing in the security line, inching forward bit by bit. You know how it goes. Shoes off, belt off, empty your pockets, the whole 9 yards. Finally, I make it to the table with all those gray plastic bins. I start unloading my stuff. Laptop in one bin, shoes in another, jacket in a third. Then I remember what my doc told me. I turn to the Transportation Security Administration lady behind the table and politely inform her about my prosthetic leg. Now I'm used to all sorts of reactions when I mention my prosthetic. Some people get awkward, some get overly sympathetic, and some just nod and move on. But this lady, she goes for option D, being a total jerk. She looks at me with this smug expression and tells me to put it in the bin. I blink, not sure I heard her right. I ask her to repeat herself. That's when she doubles down on the attitude. She tells me again to put it in the bin and keep moving, like I'm some kind of idiot holding up the line. Now, I've dealt with my fair share of difficult people, but this lady was really pushing it. I could have gotten mad, could have made a scene. But then, I had an idea. If she wanted me to put my leg in the bin, who was I to argue? So, while Miss Smug is busy restocking bins and not paying attention to me, I hop up on the table. Now, I've been taking this leg on and off for years, so I'm pretty quick at it. But for the sake of my little demonstration, I decide to ham it up a bit. I make a show of struggling with my pants leg, fumbling with the prosthetic like it's my first time. The Transportation Security Administration guy on the other side of the scanner notices what I'm doing and starts grinning. The people in line behind me are watching too, some of them trying not to laugh. Finally, with a flourish, I detach my prosthetic leg and drop it into the bin with a loud clank. That gets Miss Smug's attention. She whips around, and I swear, her eyes wide, mouth hanging open, classic deer in the headlights stuff. But I'm not done yet. I hop off the table and start making my way to the scanner on one leg. Hop, hop, hop. By now, everyone in the vicinity is watching, most of them chuckling or outright laughing. The Transportation Security Administration guy at the scanner is grinning from ear to ear as I hop through. I hear someone in line comment that Miss Smug will probably pay more attention now, and a few others agree. Once I'm through the scanner, I retrieve my bin and start putting my leg back on. As I'm doing this, people are coming up to me, giving me high fives and pats on the back. Even the Transportation Security Administration guy comes over and tells me that I just made his day. I gather up the rest of my stuff, shoot a look back at Miss Smug, who's now bright red and refusing to make eye contact with anyone, and head off to my gate. You know, losing my leg was tough. There were times I thought my life was over, that I'd never be the same. And in a way, that's true. I'm not the same person I was before. But that day at the airport, it reminded me that I'm still me. I can still stand up for myself on one leg or two, I can still make people laugh, and I can still teach a lesson when it needs teaching. All my life, people would often mistake me for being older than I am. I guess being 5'11" and having a perpetually worried expression on my face will do that. It's not all bad though. I never get hassled about curfews, and I can usually go places where adult supervision is recommended without anyone batting an eye. But sometimes, it can be a real pain. Like when I'm just trying to do my grocery shopping and suddenly I'm thrust into some ridiculous situation. You see, I've got this thing where I've memorized the layout of pretty much every store in our area. It's like my brain just clicks with the spatial organization, and I can navigate through the aisles with maximum efficiency. I joke that it's my autistic superpower, but honestly, it's pretty darn useful. So there I was, in my local grocery store, wearing my work gear, polo shirt, rain jacket, and bag, all emblazoned with my company's logo. I was just grabbing a few things to help my mom with dinner. As I'm walking from the meat section to the rice and pasta aisle, I spot a bag of pizza crusts someone had carelessly tossed in with the ground beef. Being the compulsive organizer that I am, I pick it up to return it to its proper place. That's when I hear it. A woman's voice calls out, trying to get someone's attention. I ignore it at first, figuring she's talking to someone else, but then she calls out again, this time questioning why there's nobody at a counter and asking if someone has headphones in at work. Reluctantly, I take out my AirPod. I turn to see an older woman, soaking wet from the rain outside with a sour expression on her face. I greet her politely and ask if there's something I can help her with. The woman starts complaining about the lack of staff at the deli counter. She explains that she's trying to find her grandson's favorite cheese but feels lost. She comments on how things have been hard but expresses her belief that there should at least be someone manning the cheese and meat section. I try to explain that I don't actually work at the store but offer to help her find what she's looking for anyway. The woman, however, insists that I must work there, pointing out my uniform-like attire and the fact that I was putting items back on the shelves. I attempt to clarify again, explaining that I work for a different company and that we have a saying about leaving the world better than we found it, even outside of our own workplace. Finally, understanding her mistake, the woman apologizes for bothering me. She comments that the color of my polo looks very similar to the store's uniforms, even though they actually don't look alike at all. I decide to let this slide. As we continue talking, I learn more about the woman. She tells me she's colorblind and lives with her grandchildren. She shares that she's throwing a party for her grandson who just got into college and expresses her worry about not being cool enough for his friends. I end up helping her finish her shopping, and she's so grateful that she buys me one of those mini cakes from the bakery section. She even tells me she's proud of me for getting into college too, even though I hadn't mentioned anything about that. As I left the store, I sat in my car and cried for a bit. I'd lost my own grandmother a while back, and this interaction had stirred up some emotions. It was a bittersweet moment, but ultimately it was really nice. Looking back, I realized that my appearance and demeanor often lead to these kinds of misunderstandings, but in this case, it led to a genuinely touching interaction. Sure, the woman initially mistook me for an employee, but her kindness once she realized her error more than made up for it. I guess sometimes looking older than you are and having a knack for grocery store layouts can lead to unexpected connections. And while it can be tiring to constantly be mistaken for someone I'm not, moments like these remind me that a little patience and understanding can go a long way. For 6 long years, I worked at this tire shop in northern New England. The place was okay, but the general manager, he was a nightmare. Let's call him the GM. This guy was a piece of work. He thought he was God's gift to the world, always right, never wrong. Cross him, and you'd regret it. I'm Latino, and during the 2012 election, he had the nerve to tell me that if Obama won, he'd make my work life hell. But it wasn't just me. The receptionist, let's call her the receptionist, had it even worse. The GM was always harassing her, making inappropriate comments, trying to get close to her. Mind you, this guy was a so-called conservative Christian with 11 kids at home. Talk about hypocrisy. One day, the receptionist and I were talking about how fed up we were. She was going through a divorce, and the GM saw it as an opportunity to make his move. We both had enough. The receptionist expressed her frustration, saying she couldn't take it anymore. She described how the GM looked at her and the things he said, calling it disgusting. I agreed with her, mentioning how awful he had been to me too. We both agreed that we needed to do something about the situation. That's when we hatched our plan. We knew the GM's wife probably checked the mail every day since he was always at work. So we decided to hit him where it hurt, his precious family values. I set up a throwaway email and got him subscriptions to a bunch of adult magazines. Hustler, Playboy, Penthouse, you name it. We figured his wife wouldn't be too happy about that. A couple of weeks later, the GM showed up looking like death warmed over. Turns out his wife wasn't impressed with his new reading material. He was living in a motel in the next town over. But get this, instead of trying to fix things with his family, he decided he was done with them. He actually thought he was going to start a new life with a receptionist. Can you imagine? The GM approached the receptionist, mentioning that her divorce was almost final and suggesting they should talk about their future together. The receptionist looked uncomfortable and replied that she didn't think that was appropriate. Luckily, one of the owners overheard this conversation. She took the receptionist aside and got the whole story. The next day, the main owner called the GM into his office. The owner told the GM that his behavior was unacceptable. He informed him that he was losing his GM title and would be transferred to another location. The owner also made it clear that at the end of the year, the GM would need to find a new job. The GM was shocked. He had to work at a location that was 2 hours away from his home. I guess the owner also told him to make things right with his wife because he ended up going back to her. After he left, things got better at the shop. The receptionist stayed on and was much happier without the GM around. As for me, I stuck around for a while longer, but eventually I decided to make a big change. I sold my house and became a full-time RVer. I've traveled all over the country, even to the Midwest where the GM ended up moving. When I passed through his new town, I looked him up. Upon seeing me, the GM expressed surprise, saying that I must really think something of him to look him up all the way out there. If only he knew. I just smiled and nodded, thinking about how his life had turned out. He can't keep a job for more than a year now, and his kids moved back to New England as soon as they turned 18. His old house finally sold, but for less than he paid for it. Meanwhile, I'm living my best life on the road, seeing the country and enjoying my freedom. Sometimes karma takes its sweet time, but it always comes around eventually. And let me tell you, watching it unfold in person, that's the best revenge of all.